Hello and welcome to Health and Humanity with Dan Voss, a health podcast show centered around living healthier lifestyles and improving our human connection and relationships. I have with me today Ian Hart. Ian is a fitness expert who has dedicated his life and his career to helping others heal naturally. He's the owner of Back Pain Relief for Life, the simplest and most effective way to eliminate back pain naturally and fast, and the co-founder of My Back Pain Coach. He also owns and operates EarthFit, a top-rated group training facility with 3 locations. Ian's work has been featured in Men's Health magazine, and he's appeared as a health expert on New York One News. In addition to his work, Ian also hosts regular wellness retreats at his treehouse in the Costa Rican rainforest. Ian, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I want to hear a little bit more about this treehouse in Costa Rican rainforest. It sounds awesome.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing place. It's a community of tree houses. It actually has some famous tree houses. It's been on all types of, Animal Planet, Nat Geo, HGTV, all those things. But yeah, I was, when I was at the peak of my sickness and trying to figure out how to heal, I just had a calling, like I needed nature. And that's part of what the book is about, but like back to nature. And my sister sent me a link to this treehouse community, and it was like living in a childhood dream, but also doing what I think I needed.
Sure.
So I went and checked this place out, and it just felt like I just felt so much better there. And I decided, well, hey, why not build a spot here? It was direct alignment with like all my soul's calling, my goals. My business was already called EarthFit, and so it was all in alignment.
That's so cool. And you have retreats there, so tell us a little bit more about that, and how does that work out?
Yeah, so I'm a Wim Hof instructor. I started doing transformational retreats before I even got into that, about 5 or 6 years ago. And then we incorporated the Wim Hof breathing into it. And so what we do is we do exercises to help people get more alignment with their soul's calling, and then do some breath work, some ice bath, get people out of their comfort zone to have incredible breakthroughs. And yeah, so we do it there at the treehouse, and we're also going to be doing it kind of more at a luxury spot. The treehouse is kind of like super high-end camping. It's like a lot of hiking, and there's no electricity, and we got you're open to the nature completely.
Wow.
And so we're going to also offer it kind of like luxury places here in Costa Rica.
That is so cool. That sounds very relaxing. I kind of want to be there right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe down here.
Yeah, it sounds a lot cooler than my tiny apartment here in Chicago. That's so cool. And you have a new book out called Healing Hacks, Bring Your Body Back to Nature, which, as you were describing, that's kind of part of what you really wanted to get into, is surround yourself with more nature. So that's awesome. And the book just came out about a month ago. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly a month ago.
That's so cool. You also mentioned you are a Wim Hof instructor, which is so cool. And I saw he actually had a piece in the foreword for the book. I've done a little bit of work from the Wim Hof Method with the breathing techniques and cold showers, which I actually just kind of started doing about a month ago.
Yeah.
But why don't we spend a little bit of time with Wim Hof and how that all plays out in terms of, for somebody that hasn't either heard of Wim Hof, or if they are just curious about what that technique is and what the benefits are, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, what I'm finding is not many people haven't heard of him now. He is like almost mainstream.
Yeah.
Like you talk about him, like 1 in 3 people, 1 in 2 people have heard about him now. And he wrote the foreword for the book because he heard my story, and I've worked with him a few times now through becoming the certified. But yeah, I was into breathing as a part of my healing process, and I realized the power of oxygen just through some of the breaths that I did on my own.
Sure.
And it just helped me mentally, like automatically, with like anxiety, all these things that I was dealing with, because I had brain damage. Like my I had serious neurological damage, some issues going on there. And when I started doing the breathing, I could literally feel the benefits of it, like instantly. I could feel the healing. And at some point I came across the Wim Hof method, and I started doing what he said online. Like, I can't remember what I saw, like a video or something. I started to do it. And instantly I was like, whoa, this is like the next level type stuff. And I immediately booked a retreat with him in Spain. And so I got to spend a week with him back. This was like 4 years ago, something like that now.
That's cool.
So I got to spend a week with him in Spain. And as soon as I went to that retreat, it just like clicked. I mean, I was like, these people are my tribe. It was connected with nature. He was talking about bringing the body back to nature, breath and healing and all this stuff. And I was like, this is in direct alignment with everything I already am doing, right?
Sure.
I'm already a fitness professional, and I get offered certifications all the time, and none of them are appealing to me. And I have like a CSCS cert, which is like the PhD of kind of the training realm.
Okay.
And I knew I got to get the Wim Hof certification. Like, this is guarantee. And plus, it was all backed by science, and he was continuing to do the science. And when I would go to these certifications, you'd see like doctors and PhDs and stuff like this. And we were taught by PhDs in neuroscience. And so, it's like, people have been doing breathing and Qigong. This took it to a next level, and now the science was backing it to a point where a doctor actually told Wim Hof specifically, like, if what you're saying is true, we're going to have to change all the textbooks.
Wow.
Because you're saying you can influence your autonomic nervous system, you can influence your immune system. And yeah, it's true. They actually did the studies, and they found this out. And so, it's a profound technique that can be used anywhere, anytime, which is why I incorporated it as a part of what I do already.
Yeah.
Because it's super valuable for anybody, anytime, anywhere. They can do it.
Yeah. I just started it about a month, maybe a little over a month ago. I try to do it on a daily basis. If not, it's like maybe every other day where I'm doing the breathing techniques.
Right.
I notice a big change just in my energy level and mostly just like a reduction of stress. It just totally eliminates that stress that I have. What exactly is it for somebody that just is so new to this, like myself, and just doesn't, like, I know it works and I know it has benefits, but I guess more on like a scientific level, what is it that like helps reduce stress and gives us more energy?
Oh man, it's like crazy, the list of things that it does. So just to break it down, kind of the science is what the Wim Hof method is you hyperoxygenate the body. So you breathe a lot of and get the oxygen levels up. And then when you do that, you reach a certain point, you exhale and hold. This is a basic breathing technique, and this is called hypoxia. And Wim's been doing this for like 30 years. 3 scientists actually just got the Nobel Prize last year for hypoxia, basically studies or science, and reaffirmed everything we learned from Wim Hof. And basically, when you do intermittent hypoxia, which is exhaling, meaning getting rid of all the oxygen out of the lungs, you're doing hypoxia training, and then you hold your breath. So you're holding your breath with all the oxygen. You've oxygenated the body, and now you just sit there with your breath hold. And what happens is the oxygen starts to go down, CO2 starts to go up, and then CO2 is a vasodilator. Most people, like, it gets a bad rap. It's actually super important for a lot of things. So CO2 starts to go up. And then once it reaches a point where your brain gets triggered and your diaphragm gets triggered, and it says like, hey, you need to breathe, you take an inhale, and now there's a vasodilation of all the cells, all the veins, all the arterioles. And when you take a deep breath in after that and you squeeze oxygen, you shove more oxygen into the cells, which is essential for every single action in the cells and in the body.
Okay.
It super oxygenates the body. It shoves oxygen into the areas, and it goes into the areas that need healing. So people will literally feel the healing firsthand just by doing this. So you do multiple rounds of it. And what it does is basically increases the amount of red blood cells in the body. And red blood cells are important because they have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is what transports the oxygen. So the
Okay.
more red blood cells, the more oxygen attaches to the hemoglobin, the more oxygen you get to every part of your body. And the parts of the body that are lacking oxygen are the sick and diseased areas. And so the more oxygen you get to the area, in combination with that, when you exhale and hold, the brain goes into a fight or flight kind of mode without you. I mean, some people will freak out at first if they're not comfortable with it, because the natural rhythm is to breathe. And when
Yep.
you exhale and hold, you go into that fight or flight. And when you go into the fight or flight and you hold, the adrenaline skyrockets more and greater than if you were going to go skydiving or bungee jumping for the first time in your life.
Whoa.
Yeah. So adrenaline goes sky high. Now, this isn't studied, but this is my opinion based on a lot of experience with it, that what it does is it actually balances out all the systems in the body when you do this. So if you're somebody that has, uh, you know, parasympathetic dominant, you're now going to activate your sympathetic nervous system more. If you're sympathetic dominant, you now activate your parasympathetic nervous system more. Meaning, if you've been like going and going nonstop and haven't really relaxed too much, and you've always been hyper strung, when you do the breathing, people will just be like, "Oh man, I feel amazing." Whereas other people will feel like, who are parasympathetic dominant, who kind of like calm and relaxed, they'll feel like alert. And so everybody's different. Everybody's physiology is different. Everybody reacts differently. Always a disclaimer, like if people do this, do it in a safe spot. If
Yep.
you have epilepsy, you can't do it
Yep.
because it can trigger. So those are just disclaimers. But yeah, it's those are two of like a ton of other
So
things.
many. Yeah. That's so cool. It's so fascinating. I mean, my first thought is, and I know, by the way, there's so much more that you do than just the Wim Hof method and training. So I want to get into your new book, and some of the other techniques that you like to practice. But when I hear everything you're saying with the Wim Hof method, and I'm sure all of the other just like natural holistic healing methods that you have, why isn't this something that more people are doing, and why aren't we talking about it more? Why isn't it something that is taught in schools? Like, I guess maybe it's starting to make its way to mainstream. But to me, that's like my first thought is like, why haven't I been doing all of this all along?
Yeah, because well, if I want to get deep into it, it's because people don't want you to know that you have this power on your own. Right? The whole system is designed for you to be like the doctor is your new God. And the truth is, and this is part of why the book's so important, is that this is the message that I'm trying to convey, and I live this. So it's not like I've experienced it firsthand, is that we have the power and we're ultimately responsible for our health. And learning these hacks and things that I talk about in this book is actually our responsibility, because if we want to be healthy, happy, free, then it's essential. And these things were essential back in the day, and
Yep.
it's slowly been removed. And anybody that practices kind of natural medicine now, if they make it to a certain level, like their reputation is kind of like, oh, they're a quack, oh, they're not a real doctor,
Right.
and that's changing now. People are starting to wake up because the system is failing. Medication
Right.
is not making people healthier. It's killing them. We know like the third leading cause of death is medical malpractice or doctor error or overprescription of medication. So that's where the control is. I'm hoping it'll change and people will learn this. Also, there was like a lack of knowledge in terms of breathing. I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 28.
28. Okay. So like when I was growing up very little, like people weren't practicing Eastern
Right.
medicine, and it was kind of looked at like, oh yeah, Eastern medicine. Yeah, they've been doing it for 10,000 years. They were way ahead of the curve. They knew what was going on. So people are starting to incorporate all that stuff. There's a lot more truth to it, I find.
Yep.
But with that being said, there are benefits to our medical system when there's trauma. I was in Costa Rica here. I jumped off a waterfall and I tore my pec completely off the bone. And, that's when you need the medical system.
Sure. Yeah.
They reattached it. Otherwise, I would have a useless arm for the most part.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good point. I mean, obviously there's certain situations and illnesses and injuries that we need to go to hospital and have that medical need.
Right.
But I think overall, just on just like a general health discussion, we have become far too reliant on medicine. And I'm happy you brought up the fact that the idea of, in Western culture, we're just starting to come around to that idea of the different things that have been the norm in Eastern culture for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Right.
I actually just had a friend of mine on the podcast to discuss mental health. That's kind of his niche and what he's passionate about. And we got into that briefly about how in the mental health space, in this country, we're finally starting to remove that stigma of just overall mental health and implementing some Eastern practices that have been around for thousands of years. And
absolutely.
I think it's just neat to see that. And the same thing with, I think, medicine and holistic healing. So
absolutely.
On the topic of medicine, I was actually planning on talking about that topic later on in the conversation, but since we're talking about it now, how does medicine impede the healing process overall?
Yeah, so in the book, I talk a lot about it. Now, I also interview my buddy, who's a Wim Hof instructor, who I mentioned in the book. He's a PhD in molecular medicine. He worked for the pharmaceutical companies. So, I've interviewed a lot of these people. I spoke with a lot of them, and I'm not claiming I have that knowledge, but I've spoken to people that have researched this. And I agree because I actually experienced it in my life. And then when I researched it and listened to some of these people, it's like, now that makes sense. And now I'm reversing the damage of it. But what it's designed to do is block certain things from happening. And when you block the body's natural response to cleansing and healing, you're now throwing off the balance.
Wow.
And so, for example, if your body's probably processing mucus out through diarrhea, and all of a sudden you try to stop that diarrhea in its track, then you can have a big problem there, because now you're just building it up in the system and it's not getting processed out. That's one example of it.
Sure.
But for me, I was given, well, first off, I was put on medication at a young age. Speaking of mental health, I was put on antidepressants at a young age, not knowing that most likely I was intolerant of wheat and I was eating a ton of wheat. My mouth was filled with amalgam fillings. So if you have issues with food allergies, it can cause inflammation, which causes inflammation in the brain, which causes depression. Amalgam fillings are directly linked to almost every single disease that you can imagine,
Wow.
including depression. I talk about that in the book, and there's a guy. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. Anyways, he was a PhD who had amalgam fillings and figured out he had mercury toxicity. And he created a whole protocol, simple protocol for mercury toxicity, and it solved all his problems. But he literally listed almost every disease and illness is connected with it, because it's the number one neurotoxin. And if people have amalgam fillings in their mouth, most of the time they don't know that their illness is directly connected with it. And it usually synergizes with those things. So I had my whole mouth filled with amalgam fillings, which is probably part of the depression. And then I'm put on medication because I believe in the doctors and they know what's right. And this medication is going to fix me. And my parents were bought into it. You know, you should go to the psychologist. They give you the medication. It didn't really work. Like, they kept changing the medication. And then you find out later that this stuff is not even proven. The placebo actually shows to work better on some instances. So we were duped, and we've been duped, and there's better ways, and people are finding out about it now. So to answer the question, it can block the natural process of healing the body. There are instances where it's life or death, and maybe you need it. But for example, fluoroquinolones, antibiotics, was part of destroying my life, and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, that should never, ever be taken unless it's like the last resort before you're about to die, because it will destroy your life to a point where you may not want to live anymore. And so those are the things that I speak about so that people are careful. And they hand Cipro out to people all the time, which is a fluoroquinolone. They would hook people up just for being in the hospital to an IV bag of it sometimes, just because they're in the hospital and they could be exposed to other bacteria. And so this is what's going on inside the medical system.
Wow. It's pretty frustrating to see that play out, where, you know, you have a certain illness or a certain situation where you probably don't need that medicine, but it's just like a Band-Aid, right? It's just a quick fix that we're given. So I'm sure that was pretty frustrating for you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even the product I was given wasn't even out on the market. It wasn't even approved. Whoa. The doctor had one of those like packets that is in the doctor's office that was like, you know, you hand out to people that want to test it or something. He just gave it to me, and I had walking pneumonia at the time. And I kind of got a second opinion, and then I found out it's like a low dose of chemo. And it has been known to completely destroy, like, all the symptoms I have were linked to it, and it synergizes with mercury, which I had all the mercury fillings. So my problem was a culmination of a lot of things, which I go over, and it's never just like one thing. And I talk about allostatic load, and that's the amount of stress that your body's able to take kind of before it breaks.
Yeah, man, that's wild. That's really wild. I want to talk a little bit about your expertise and how you got here. And I know you've touched on some of that, and I'm sure you go into greater detail in the book.
Yeah.
But I know a big thing that you do is healing back pain. You know, obviously you have the holistic natural healing process, but back pain is kind of your specific niche. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'm a strength and conditioning specialist. And with that is movement, understanding the science of mechanics, biomechanics, physiology, et cetera. And then I was also somebody that had severe back pain. I landed on my back, injured my back severely playing basketball twice at the same spot. I broke transverse process, and I thought I was doomed for back pain the rest of my life. Wow. It always was reoccurring. And so when I was in training, I still was having an issue with it, but I was trying to figure out the formula for healing the back. And I came across somebody who had knowledge from University of Belgrade, which is one of the best places for sports science. And he had some knowledge that he had taken from the professors there, who all had PhDs. And we kind of combined a program called Back Pain Relief for Life that is a natural way through movement that people can learn on their own. That's like what we're trying to teach them, is not be dependent. You can use other people, and it works synergistically with like chiropractic, depending on the chiropractor, obviously, and other modalities. But it teaches people when they have back pain, how to get out of it. And it's something that can be done anywhere, anytime. And actually we use the Wim Hof breathing in combination, because Wim Hof breathing or any breath work will just enhance anything. So So yeah, we have a specific program. It's 8 exercises done in a specific way. And it's designed to decompress the spine, get more blood flow, nutrients, and oxygen. And we've helped pretty much every back issue that you can think of. And people come to us as a last resort for, surgery, before surgery, or even after surgery as well.
Wow. You may be hearing from me soon because I have some back issues. I have 2 herniated discs in my lower spine.
Yeah.
And I've gone to physical therapy. I've gone to a chiropractor. It's not super severe to the point where I need surgery yet.
Right.
But it's something I've dealt with for probably 5 years or more.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good topic to talk about because it's another belief system that people like the doctors will recommend invasive procedures now, and they've increased dramatically as opposed to 20, 15 years ago as to dealing with back pain. And so the recommendations...
They've increased or decreased?
What's that?
Increased or decreased?
Increased invasive procedures.
Got it.
Right. So people are spending more and wasting more of their time, money, and energy. And there are times when back surgery is absolutely essential. Right. So there's like quad-equine syndrome. I can never say that word properly, but that's when someone needs surgery ASAP, right? That's damage to the nerve. They can lose bladder control, numbness in the leg, etc. For the most part, everything else can usually be healed. And basically, yeah, so failed back surgery syndrome is a term that's used because it fails more often than not. And I deal with these people. And I also see people who are told they need surgery, and then we just do these movements, maybe like 3-4 sessions, or maybe even more, depending on the issue. And they never have to deal with it again. And so I've actually sat down with the person in my hometown who does the insurance coding for the spinal surgeons. And she told me firsthand, I would never get surgery.
Wow.
Because I see what happens to these people. They come back, they're either hooked on medication, the pain's still there, or it's worse. And she just went on and on and on about how she sees it firsthand. And so that's why I try to tell people, as a last resort, there are times when the pain is so great, there's too much, and maybe it will be beneficial. I always, before people go under the knife, try to get them to try the alternative. And luckily, we've been kind of those go-to people that have helped in those situations. So letting people know that there is a solution, that they can heal their back naturally. And yeah, we can definitely, I can send you some info on that.
That'd be great. That's got to be, super fulfilling for you to know that you are helping people that have, in this case, back pain, probably for a while, and they just feel frustrated, and maybe they feel like they have no other solution, and here you are able to give them something that can actually have a real impact on their lives.
Yeah, it's dramatically fulfilling. It's like I feel blessed to have come across it, and that it like kind of some of the stuff fell into my lap, and just for me personally, because I had back pain, and like I've never had back pain since. And if I do, it's from traveling or eating inflammatory foods, and I know how to deal with it. And I use the back program to help deal with it. And so that's the whole point, is to teach people the same thing when they're traveling. They can do these movements in a hotel room. All I need is a pillow and a chair. And so, yeah, that's really cool. The goal.
You brought up food just now in terms of that's inflammatory food. I'm not sure to what degree you, what type of level of knowledge you have with nutrition, but where does nutrition play into all of this with holistic healing?
Yeah, it's huge. I talk about basically when a baby's born, based on the baby being born, you can look at 4 things, right? So sleep, how they eat, how they breathe, and how they eliminate. And if one of those things are off, you start to have an issue. If you have 2 or 3 of those things off, that's when disease sets in. and the body's off balance and you need some healing. And so obviously eating is one of those things. And the first thing that I recommend for people, and I'm not a nutritionist, but I don't think people need to be nutritionists. I talk about intuitive eating. It's very simple. Like, people look at the next best diet. Well, the best diet is the diet that makes you feel good, right? Not like feel good, like, oh, this cake is so good, I feel great.
Right.
Like, actually makes you feel less inflamed. You have more energy. You have more clarity. You feel better. So people can start to eliminate the things that are known to cause inflammation. That's the first step. And basically, it's going to be your grains, breads, especially in the U.S. when they've been modified. So all the inflammatory foods, alcohol, it was one of the most inflammatory. And so eliminate those foods first, and then intuitively eat. Part of the problem is people eat completely unconsciously.
Yeah.
And they just sit down and they shove food down their throat, and then they go off and do their own thing. And then they start focusing on the work again, and they don't even connect their body with the food. It's just like shoving food down, then go back to the computer, start working. The next thing you know, like, their back is aching and they don't know if it's the work or if it's the food. So intuitive eating would be slowly, consciously eating your food and then seeing how the body responds, right? Do you have gas and bloating? Do you feel foggy and tired? Do you feel like, and then recognizing it and saying, like, that's probably not the food for me. And then starting to find the foods that are good for you. And keep in mind, those foods change. If you eat the same thing for 3 weeks consistently, your body starts to actually build antibodies. So that's why eating seasonally is super important. All right, eating the foods. In the US, we don't even know what season it is. It's like everything's all the time. You can get it no matter what. In Costa Rica, it's a totally different story, right? So you have seasons. The fruit grows on the trees and it falls, and then they sell it on the street. And it's like, now they're going to start to have a season for certain fruits. You'll see people on the side of the street trying to sell them everywhere. So it's a very important part of the health process and healing.
Yeah, that really is. I was just listening. I'm sure you've heard of, I don't know if you have heard of Ben Greenfield.
Oh yeah.
I was listening to his podcast the other day, and he was talking about how for his family dinners, when they sit down to eat a meal every night, he and his whole family, they'll take 3 deep breaths before they even start eating.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it helps them kind of just like get rid of whatever stress they brought to that dinner table. And then they can now eat just a little bit more relaxed. So yep. I'm not sure if you have any information there on what that does or why that works.
I actually speak about that a little bit in the book. I think I had to cut my book was like 500 pages. I reduced it to 220 or something like that. But yeah, so when you do the 3 breaths, especially the thoughts you have associated with it are important, but it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. And so you get more blood flow to your digestive system, right? Your bronchioles relax. So all the fight or flight systems kind of shut down, and now your body's more prepared for the digestion. So the assimilation, the breakdown, the acids, everything that goes into the body starts to get broken down more and absorbed into the body. If you're in the fight or flight mode and you eat, you don't break down the food and digest it, and therefore it can putrefy. You'll be eliminating, full food that's not really getting assimilated. So it's essential. And then if you have like a thought of, gratitude, which I think we lost, because the food is just like, oh yeah, I can get food anywhere, anytime, no matter what. I think I also go into the book about, the thought process of hunting, like 150 years ago, the husband would kiss the wife and leave for 3 or 4 days or 2 weeks or whatever.
He didn't know if he was going to return or not.
Yeah, exactly. You'd take the kid, maybe, show him hunting, and then he'd go out and kill something, and then they'd have to drag it all the way back, and then they'd have to skin it, and then they'd have to cut it up. Then when it hits the plate, there's a massive sense of gratitude.
Right.
And it's almost a spiritual experience, and we've lost that. So the more we can actually connect those thoughts with it, the healthier it will be, and the more we'll actually assimilate the food, because we are a chemical stew, and every thought triggers chemistry. And so when you have those thoughts, it'll actually trigger the digestion process better. And so, yeah, so it's really important, those things.
That's so cool. It is fascinating to think how much something as simple as food, what's simple to us, a few hundred years ago, thousands of years ago, it was not a simple thing to get that food on your plate. Like it was, like you said, an all-day task, or even sometimes 2, 3, 4 days just to go out and get that meal.
Yep.
And it's
Interesting thing about it, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
That's the healing part.
Yeah.
You're connected with nature. You're now out in the sun. You're out in fresh air. That is actually what the soul is like urging for, you know?
That's crazy. It's interesting you say that. I've been toying with the idea. I love Amazon. I have Amazon Prime, and I get things delivered here all the time. And I've been toying with the idea of doing the Amazon Fresh or Amazon Now or whatever it's called for grocery delivery. And, for a while now, I'll walk to the grocery store and get my groceries. But obviously everything with going on with quarantine, I was like, maybe it would be easier to get everything, my groceries delivered. But then I thought about, like, at the very least, I can walk 3 blocks to the grocery store to get food.
Right.
It's one thing I can control, whereas, sure, it's convenient to get my groceries delivered, but now I'm like completely eliminating any kind of work to get food to my door.
Right.
So I know obviously walking to the grocery store is not even in comparison to hunter and gatherers,
Right.
and what they had to do to get food, but at least it's something where I'm walking, I'm going outside, I'm getting a little bit of sunlight,
Absolutely.
rather than just sitting on my couch and pressing a button and having the food delivered.
Yeah. I mean, quarantine or staying in your home psychologically is really bad. And it's actually, these are tested techniques used to psychologically break a person down.
Wow.
And on that topic, people get mad at me when I say this, but I don't really care because I know it's true. And we're talking about breathing. And the mantra going around is, I can't breathe. And this is not a mantra we want in anybody's consciousness.
Right.
It's not something you want to repeat over and over again. I understand it's associated with a movement,
Sure.
but there's better ways to say things. And you're literally killing the spirit when you say that, because inspiration, inspire, is connected with, it means to breathe in, and it also means being in spirit.
Yeah.
So breath, this is how powerful breath is. It's one of the only things that's real. And so when you start repeating that and you start disseminating that out to everybody, you're actually trying to kill the spirit without, there's controversy whether this is known or not known.
Sure.
And
it's super interesting. I never would have thought of that. And obviously, like you said, it's something that's specific to a movement and has a purpose. But just psychologically for our human spirit, that mantra is obviously a very negative right. thing.
Yeah.
Wow. You talk a little bit about, or probably quite a bit about, disease and how disease arises by a series of interconnected stressors. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, I know we talked about breathing and specifically with food, taking deep breaths before you eat. What else is it about, those stressors that we have that lead to disease?
Yeah, so there's so many stressors that it could vary. Everybody's different. I mean, trauma as a child that doesn't get resolved is a major stressor on the body.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to eat and exercise, but you haven't resolved some of these things, those are the things that I would say need to be addressed right away. And they can be painful, but when they're addressed, the healing that takes place is profound. So because it's unconscious stress and you don't know it, especially if you like block things out or you try to like shove it down or not deal with it, it's unconscious stress, and unconscious stress is almost worse because it's there all the time. It never goes away. And like I said, we're a chemical stew, and it's triggering chemicals. And so
Yep.
if you held on to anger related to an incident, and that anger is staying with you, it's going to pop out, and it's going to pop out somewhere, and it's going to be projected usually on somebody else. And it causes a lot of chaos, not only in your body, but internal chaos or external chaos, I should say. And so it's healing. That person needs healing. A lot of people who are angry, it's like the saying, hurt people hurt people. Um, those are things that I always just mention because people are sometimes only thinking about food, nutrition, and just current stress. Like, oh, my job is so stressful. It's like that would be helpful, which is important too. It's so that's one of the things that I like to ask people or bring up. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's really fascinating to me how much everything is connected with health. Like you have, I'm starting to notice more and more conversations I'm having that mental health is very much connected with our physical health and vice versa. And I think we're starting to really learn more and more about that over the years. Yeah. Very cool. So you brought up the 4 natural functions of the body. Maybe we could just kind of recap those. You mentioned it was nutrition, breathing. What were the other 2 that I'm missing here?
So we got food. So like I'll break it down in terms of a baby. When a baby comes out, it's breathing usually through the nose. Its belly's rising up. It's usually placed right on the mother. All right, it starts to eat. It's getting the best nutrients you possibly can get. And then how it sleeps, and then how it eliminates. It starts eliminating. And those 4 things, so going to the bathroom, I should say, those 4 things are really the basis of health. They're foundational principles. And so, yeah, those 4 areas.
Yeah, that's incredible. So obviously each one plays a big role in our overall health. You know, we know of nutrition. You said sleep was another one?
Yes.
Was one of those 4?
Sleep is so important.
I feel like sleep, maybe you feel differently, but I feel like sleep is neglected quite a bit in terms of the conversation of health. I think most people know it's important, but I don't know if we talk about it enough. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I see it a lot. I speak about it specifically in the book because, and it's connected with nature. So, and this may be very important for the listeners. It's like what I talk about is first morning light from the sun, and as it goes down, getting that light, because what it does is it triggers melatonin, right? And melatonin is a powerful antioxidant. It's also what allows you to go get drowsy before you go to sleep. And so sleep hygiene is super important. And what we're seeing is the hygiene is going down dramatically. One, because people aren't getting out enough. They're not getting that sun that they need, which is vitamin D or hormone D. It's actually a hormone. So it triggers a lot of these chemical processes that help the body heal. It helps the body get deep sleep. So triggers melatonin, right? If you're not getting sun, you're sitting out inside all day, you're on your screen, right? You're getting blue light all day, which is connected with cancer. Then you're not going to be releasing melatonin. You're not going to go into a deep sleep, and you're not going to recover. And if you do that enough, you won't be getting the recovery you need. And Wi-Fi is everywhere, and Wi-Fi screws up for the most part. People are affected differently. There's some people that are dramatically affected by Wi-Fi. Others aren't really. But for the most part, I speak with a guy. I did an interview with a guy who's in the book, and I talk about to him specifically, and he's seeing cases of insomnia completely disappear. Even a colicky baby will disappear when he starts to move the Wi-Fi and reduce the Wi-Fi. Depression, anxiety, etc. So it's hard to get a good REM sleep if you're being bathed in positive ions, which is coming from these frequencies. If you're not going outside, if you're sitting there with the blue light in your eyes because
Yep.
it's telling you that the light's still on, the sun's still out, it won't trigger the melatonin. You won't get the deep sleep. So there's like a cascade of systems that happen, and it's super important.
That's
It's
crazy.
connected with cancer. It's connected with not detoxing, like if you're not going to relax. So yeah.
Wow. This is the first I'm hearing of Wi-Fi affecting our sleep. So the frequencies from Wi-Fi, how does that all play out? How does that work?
So yeah, we have natural frequencies or energy that are surrounding us daily, and we are an antenna. We are an antenna, and we're also so we're giving and receiving information.
Yep.
All the time. And this is why I talk about bring the body back to nature, because when you're around nature, you're actually picking up these healing frequencies. We're surrounded by I shouldn't say unnatural frequencies. These frequencies still come from other places. But if it's constant radiation, low grade radiation, your body, when it hits your body, it actually excretes a toxin. So your antioxidant levels have to be much higher. Your stress has to be reduced to process all this stuff. And when you go to bed, you're going to bed and you're supposed to be recovering. But now you're getting hit by this low grade radiation, and your body is just trying to keep up with it. And so it's literally having to kind of just keep up with cleansing the body and healing the body at a normal state rather than going to a deep repair and fully repairing. And that's on top of all the other things that we're bombarded with nowadays,
Right.
which is processed foods and pesticides and all these chemicals. So yeah, it's one of the things I talk about is if you're sick, there are doctors, functional doctors, who won't work with anybody unless they start to remove their Wi-Fi. And it's not just Wi-Fi, smart meters on the side of the houses, these cell phone towers that are nearby. These are directly connected with cancer. So it's important people be aware of this. You are an antenna, and if you have antennas beaming powerful frequencies, it's going to affect you in one way or another. And there's people that's out there like, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect you. No, we know it does. There's
That's
studies
wild.
to prove it, and people will literally feel it. They did a study on the smart meter, and they literally draw blood before and after, and they could see the effects on the blood instantly. And everybody was different. There were people that had different responses.
That's crazy. So what are some solutions? Obviously, getting outside and being in nature is a good thing and something that would help. Do we go as far as would turning off my Wi-Fi router when I go to sleep? Does that help? What?
Yeah, absolutely. People who need real healing, like my sister, I thought about doing this. I never did it when I was there, but she had a switch where it shut all the circuit breakers down. Even you can have no Wi-Fi, and the electricians could have set your house up incorrectly that it is like a microwave. So, some
Wow.
people can feel terrible in their house because of how the electricity is set up, and it can just be hitting you with radiation from all sides. So they have tools to test this out. And even if you don't have your iPhone and you have one of those cords that gets plugged into the wall that doesn't have the device that deactivates the charge, I can't remember what it's called, and the cord is right next to you, you're actually getting hit with EMF, right? So without the phone there.
Crazy.
So if your head is right next to an outlet, you're still getting hit with EMF. So shutting the circuit breakers down, you'll notice you'll get a deep sleep, right? So that's part of the reason why we do retreats in the jungle. And there's no electricity. It is super dark usually in the jungle. And so melatonin goes down. You're hearing sounds that you would hear on meditation CDs, basically. And it's a healing. It's just doing that by itself is healing.
That sounds incredible. You talked about sleep hygiene. What other things can we be working on for proper sleep hygiene?
Yeah, so at night, it's very important that we start to activate the melatonin. So one, if you can get the sunlight to your eyes, obviously don't stare in the sun. But as the sun's going down, you get the light into the eyes. If you can do it in the morning, or at least 10, 15 minutes a day. And then as the sun goes down, you start to turn the lights down a little bit. You start to relax the body, not watching news that's filled with fear, hate, anger, and maybe start to read a book. You'll start to activate the melatonin more. You'll start to get drowsy, right? And then you'll go into a deep sleep, not putting the phone right in your face. If you do, there's blue blocking glasses, which tend to help pretty well. So it stops the blue light from hitting your eyes, which tells your brain that you are, it's still light out, and that will help release melatonin. And then you go into a deeper sleep. So those are the things that I recommend for sleep hygiene. And there's a lot of other things, like there's supplements people can take, natural supplements that help trigger the response as well. I don't really get into that, but there are, there are supplements people can use.
Okay.
Like valerian root, chamomile, lemon balm, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, I find the idea of light being really fascinating. I notice a huge difference in my quality of sleep when I have just like a pitch black room compared to, even if I have, like, I actually have blackout
curtains,
shades, curtains.
Yeah.
Drawing a blank here. And I noticed that helps quite a bit, but there's sometimes like they don't fit perfectly, so there's actually just like a little sliver of opening there, and it's just enough to allow light in and affect my sleep. So now I actually have a eye mask like that I wear as well, just to like block out everything and make it pitch black, and it makes a huge difference for me.
If you have a little light on and it's hitting your body, it'll affect you. I have where I am now, there's an air conditioning unit, and when you hit power on it, it turns on, like it tells you the temperature that it's on, and it's a huge light, and it's shining in on me. So I just cover those things up, and it makes a huge difference. Like you could tell right away. Like if this thing was like shining right on me. So if people have even like, like an alarm light. Or alarm clocks are actually a lot of EMF. Those are one of the worst things to put by your head. So battery alarm clocks is some things I recommend. So there's a lot of little tricks that can be done to improve sleep.
That's interesting. And then you talked about the air conditioning. I notice when I have a cooler temperature too, it totally changes the game. It makes me sleep so much deeper. So I either dial down if it's wintertime, I'll just dial down the heat, try to get to like 60 degrees. Another thing Ben Greenfield has talked about, they have there's the chili pad, I think it's called. It's like that pad you can put under your sheets and makes your mattress really cool. It's expensive. It's like, I don't even know how much it is, like $500-$600. So a little hack, if you don't have the money to spend on that chili pad, you can actually wear wool socks, and what that does is it'll cool down the rest of your body while it keeps your feet warm. So I think from my understanding, it helps the blood flow throughout the rest of the body.
Interesting. There I know that actually my wife does that. She wears socks, so maybe that's like she's already doing that naturally. I do. There is one thing that I always recommend with people, like that can possibly trigger something, but it's also good to let your feet breathe. So if people have shoes on all day and socks on all day, and then they put wool socks on, you're not letting your feet breathe. So what I would say with that is at least give some time where your feet are breathing. Sometimes you might only need the wool socks, maybe at a certain time of the year or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very cool. Before I get to my last question here, I want you to have the opportunity to share where people can find you, where they can find your new book. Where would you like to send everybody?
So my Back Pain Relief for Life program is at backpainreliefforlife.com with the number 4, so 4 life. That's where they can find the back pain program. My book, Healing Hacks, Bring the Body Back to Nature, is on Amazon.com. And then I also have My Back Pain Coach on Facebook. And so that's one of the best places if you are dealing with back pain. And then Ian Hart on Facebook or Instagram. And my Facebook name is actually EarthFit, which is my training business. So those are the places you can find me. And I usually post a lot of my stuff on My Back Pain Coach, a lot of the health stuff, but I also do it to a certain degree on my own page.
Got it. Very cool. And I'll have that all linked up. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description, or the audio, I'll have it in the show notes of the podcast.
Awesome.
Very cool. So my last question I have for you is, who do you want to impact the most in the world?
Oh, man. Who do I want to impact the most? I think I want to impact the people who are unconscious of their power and empower them to understand their body is a miracle. Their body is designed to heal naturally. And something I bring up in the book is that when we were in the wombs, we didn't do anything. Our body was just made naturally, right? We had no control over it. We just came out of the womb. Somebody took care of us. We weren't thinking about what we were doing. So the body is a miracle that was designed to heal naturally when we give it what it needs. And it needs rest. It needs good food. It needs a lot of sleep, like we're talking about, good water, good clean water, happiness, right? So just like loving and connection. So when we have all those things, the body will heal. If we're holding on to anger, hate, stress, all those things, it just won't heal. And so that's what I want people who are dealing with illness and sickness. You can help yourself more than anybody else can help you.
I love that, man. That's so powerful. If you're listening, be sure to check out the book, Healing Hacks. I know I will be. It sounds like there's just all kinds of amazing tips and tricks and hacks for natural healing. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Ian, for taking the time to join me on this show and sharing your story and your mission. I know it's helping a lot of people and having a real impact. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Have a good day.
All right, you too.